The man behind one of the biggest sports nutrition gyms, fighters in all of Australian MMA.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your main event.
Live from HBF Stadium Festival Hall. Melbourne Pavilion.
Not even backstage, we're literally outside. Was that the best fight card in Australian MMA history?
Call me crazy, but make sure you call me when I'm right.
Be good if the Aussie MMA Instagram page would give us a bit of glow up because we're killing it.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Australian MMA podcast. My name is Mitch Tinley. Today's guest is owner, founder, principal, responsible man that takes care of CMBT, which you might know as a sort of nutrition brand, sports nutrition. They do gyms. They have many fighters fighting under their brand. Brentin Mumford, Christian Lapham, Tasar Malone, Muecke. They've got crazy fighters that, look, if you don't know who CMBT is, you're going to see them very soon. Nutrition-wise, I mean, they've got Alex Volkanovski sort of pushing the brand. So they are high level. I mean, I think they just recently did sort of like a share drive and they raised hundreds of thousands of dollars. They're doing great things for the sport of MMA and even just sport in general. This chat covers everything, man. Miles was... he talks about sort of CMBT, how it got started, what it is, where it's going. It almost weirdly sounds like an ad to start with. I promise you it's not. He then talks about Shannon Ross, who went into the UFC from Australian MMA and had some speed bumps along the way. And he gets very raw and very vulnerable with it all. And speaking of vulnerability, he's had some horrendous things happen in his personal life with, unfortunately, his mother taking her own life, and he is quite selfless and goes into that, and like I said, is very open and vulnerable about what that did to him and kind of the lessons that he's learnt and taken, and how it's kind of helped him become the man that he is and create, you know, a very successful business and businesses and a very successful life. So it's a very long chat, but honestly, out of nearly 400 interviews I've done, this is probably one of my favorite interviews in the sense of just where it goes, how it gets there, and what we learn along the way. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to hear from our sponsor, and then on the other side, Muecke from CMBT.
Fuel the fight with Australian-made MMA-inspired streetwear and support the next generation of MMA superstars. Delivering unprecedented support to the Aussie MMA scene, support PRP Global on their journey. 100% of profits go to the fighters. Check PRP Global out today.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. Miles Muecke, mate, welcome.
Thanks so much, Mitchie. Great to be here, mate.
Geez, CMBT, I was hearing it everywhere, seeing it everywhere. At first, I'll take you back to when I first sort of noticed it. I was like, okay, Volkanovski seems to be taking it. Is it a fish oil? Is it a drink? I don't know. Anyway, went out of my brain. Then all of a sudden, I'm like, there's a gym? What's going on? Now you have world-class fighters. First of all, what's your relationship to CMBT, and basically, what is it?
I love it. I'm one of the co-founders of CMBT, and we originally started as a sports nutrition brand. We did have a gym at the time, which was a smaller, I guess you'd call it a hobby gym. We called it Apex Training Academy. And so we were growing a small community. We probably only had maximum 40 members by the time we'd sort of finished that. But we started CMBT as a sports nutrition brand, and a space became available in the same precinct where we are now. And we just thought, wow, that space is awesome. That would make for an awesome HQ for CMBT. And we took it on. And so all of a sudden we transferred our 40 members from a small space into a much, much bigger space, which was a bit of a risk, as you can imagine. But it all turned out. And now I've just literally just left the gym because we're doing renovations, trying to create more mat space because we're busting at the seams at the moment. So must be doing something okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say you do it really well, and of course, like fighters like Tasar Malone, you got Brentin Mumford and whatnot. What is sort of the direction of CMBT? Because you're kind of doing everything. Do you want to be doing everything?
So the businesses are quite separate in terms of they're separate companies. So CMBT Nutrition is a completely separate company. CMBT Training Center is a completely separate company, but they're owned under the same umbrella. So they're very much treated as separate businesses, although they do have the same brand that sits over the top of it. We have very different sort of goals for each of the businesses. The nutrition is obviously far more scalable, has a worldwide sort of reach. We're in lots of petrol stations, service stations, mining camps, military bases, gyms, all sorts of things. So we've got a wide reach with the nutrition. But when it comes to the gym, literally, we just want it to be, seen as a professional performance center. We want to create world-class MMA athletes and submission grappling athletes. And I really sort of turned that motivation only over the last sort of few years. When we first started the original gym that I spoke of, it was a hobby because we loved martial arts. I've been doing this for 15 years. Same with my business partners, Jesse and Az and Sel. And we just wanted a space where we could connect with like-minded people, get fit, have fun, do martial arts. But over time, as we started to attract some, really skillful martial artists and competitors specifically, I started to go, oh shit, okay, we have the potential to turn this into something really great. And so I turned my attention from it just being a great facility for everyone, including mums and dads, pops and kids and stuff, to, okay, we can create world-class athletes here. And that's where I've sort of focused my attention over the last couple of years.
So how did it get up and running? Because obviously I've seen your almost like crowdfunding shares, and I'll ask you about that sort of stuff in a minute. But how did it get up and running? Was it all just drug money or?
Yeah, absolutely not. So quite the opposite. I'm very poor on paper, but have a few exciting assets. Let's just put it that way. I've poured a lot into these ones. I came from a law background. I moved from a law background into a marketing agency, and that marketing agency specifically dealt with health and wellness brands. So all we looked after was sports nutrition brands. At any particular time that you'd walk into a nutrition warehouse or an ASN or something like that, we'd literally probably worked with every brand on that shelf, whether it was building them websites, running their paid media, you name it, we did it. Formulations, because my business partner Sel's background is in product formulation. And so that was where we ran that agency for 10 years. We eventually sold it. And during that time, it was like a business incubator. So, any profits that we would make through the agency, we wanted to build other assets and businesses outside of that agency. And one of them was CMBT Nutrition. We didn't think that there was something out there that could support our community. And so we knew that we could create it ourselves. And that's what we ended up doing. So a lot of blood, sweat, tears, and money have gone into creating these things. But it's my passion, so I wouldn't want it any other way.
And in the sense of, because I saw this pop up, and obviously as a like a brand myself that kind of is looking to be more profitable each quarter, and we're always trying to step it up. I noticed what you did, which was this thing that I've never seen before, which was like a crowdfunding stock market. And as a guy that's worked in finance before and obviously dealt with ASX companies, I did not know that was a thing that was possible. So it's like crowdfunding, but fuck, this sounds like an ad. It's not. It's like crowdfunding, but people can buy a percentage of the company. How does that work?
Yeah, correct. So it's over now. So don't worry, it's not an ad. So no one can buy it anymore. But yeah, it's an awesome opportunity for brands looking to get some capital for growth. But instead of going to sort of the private market and look at venture capitalists or high net worth individuals, although high net worth individuals come through this crowdfunding platform as well, there's a platform called Virtual, and they basically give you the option to go out to the public, whether it's your community or anyone, customers of the brand, and literally purchase shares in the company. So we've got 80 new shareholders on board for CMBT, and we raised a couple of $100,000. And they all get share certificates. They're all part of the journey now. Anytime we have a liquidity event, we sell, we list. If that's the strategy, then they're going to get a return on that. So yeah, it's a cool opportunity to get involved in companies, but obviously every investment is a risk. But yeah, we feel obviously very passionate and strongly that we're going to make something pretty special out of this company. So yeah, it's exciting to have all of this new community come on board and become essentially owners of the brand with us.
Is it held in the same like regulations and stuff as the stock market?
It's not the stock market, so we're still a private company, whereas the stock market is for public companies.
Yeah.
So everything is still private, but it's highly regulated. So it was a great process. We had to, go through serious legal regulations from their side and our side that run the platform. We had to make sure everything was squeaky clean, obviously, because we're pitching to the public. So they really protect the public from any companies that are dodgy and trying to raise money. So it was a huge process, but yeah, it was a great process at the same time.
And what's it all kind of build towards? Like, why did you do it?
I think similar to what you were saying, where your goal is to increase the business quarter on quarter, which is great. Growth comes with the cost. We can stop where we are, we can create efficiencies, and we can become highly profitable. But that's not. It doesn't follow our impact statement. We want to impact as many people as we possibly can. We want to go global. We want to go overseas. We have many opportunities to move into different foreign markets. And we also have a lot of opportunities to expand into larger retail formats here in Australia and New Zealand and things like that. So all of it costs money. So it's not just like Woolworths comes to you and gives you $1 million and you're off. It's like, no, it actually costs money to have that retail shelf space, which people don't realize. It costs us in promotions. It costs us in all sorts of things before you even make money. So it costs a lot to grow. We're in a highly growth, strategy phase right now. And so that money is simply going to go to unlocking opportunities that we couldn't before. So yeah, it's exciting.
What's the blue sky of CMBT then?
Definitely the nutrition. I mean, like being able to sell, hundreds of thousands of bars or drinks to petrol stations and mining camps and all these sorts of things is just unbelievable. You've seen what brands like Prime and et cetera have done. That's the potential. And so that's where the blue sky is. We're not necessarily playing in the same spaces as every other sports nutrition brand. We have a strong foothold in mining and military and first responders and all these things, which we've only been able to, unlock because of our networks and the people that are part of the brand. So that's where we see a lot of opportunity. We've got distribution in Singapore and Indonesia and New Zealand, and we're going to move into the US and things like that. So there's heaps of opportunity for us there. But when it comes to the gym as well, that's a little less scalable. It's a very special community that it's very hard to duplicate. And we also do it all in terms of, we have grappling, we have wrestling, we have, striking, we have a gym space and things. And, as it's very hard to sort of create a center that does it all and does it all well. So there's lots of opportunity with the gym as well to branch out and create other facilities. But I'm a little bit more protective of that because of sort of like what we've created there. I don't want to sort of dilute it, so to speak.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Well, then has there been a moment throughout your journey where you've felt like throwing it all in?
If I'm completely honest, the answer is no. Anything I've ever done in life, I've stuck to. You know, I've seen it through, and I think that is, for lack of modesty, maybe one of my strong personality traits, and also could work against me as well, where I've held on to things maybe longer than I should have. But I see things through. So, you know, whether it's martial arts, doing jiu-jitsu, going all the way to becoming a black belt and things like that, that's an example for you. Or, you know, going through school and going through uni and spending a lot of times and being loyal to jobs and all these sorts of things. Like I've just stuck it through because I realized that if you do and you weather those storms, you know, only positive results come as a result of that, of weathering those storms. And fuck, man, I've weathered a lot of storms, but you have to weather storms to create, you know, any successful opportunities. So there's been heaps of tough times and continues to be. And as you grow and quote unquote create more success, those tough times just become tougher and more expensive and more risky, and you can lose a lot more and things like that. But man, I love it. This is it's, you know, I'm a fighter in that sense. Maybe less so in the cage, but in business and in that. That's where I feel like I'm a fighter.
Do you have an origin story, like a moment where, I don't know, you're eating a Mars bar or you're drinking a prime drink and you're like, you know what? I could do this. Like, was there ever a moment like that, like a light bulb moment?
I've always been entrepreneurial. So like as a kid going through high school, I used to screen print T-shirts and like sponsor our local surf comps and things like that. So I always felt creative. I always felt like I could take something from my brain, a vision I had, to creating something tangible and real. And I think I always had a drive for that. So I created a company that distributed combat sports gear from Japan when I was young. We started a jiu-jitsu gi company, and you know, I started so many things. And so I've always had the confidence to say like, okay, if I have a vision, I know that I can work it out to create a tangible product. And I guess when you're in the space for a long period of time, both being in the martial arts space and both being in the health and fitness or sports nutrition space, you become a quasi expert in that space. You see where the gaps are, you see how things are created, you see the landscape of the market, and you see how you can probably make some decisions to, you know, create some things that are more beneficial for your community in that sense. So I think it was just time spent within spaces that allowed me to go, all right, you know, something's missing here, and I have the passion and motivation to make it better, or put my spin on that world. And I guess that's where it came from.
Have you noticed the landscape of MMA changing to where obviously it's no longer just dudes punching each other in the pub? Like you got yourself with a law background, guys like Tim Simpson, Dan Maudsley, who run Chosen Advisory, they're geniuses when it comes to that sort of stuff. We're seeing like people who can be lawyers putting their powers into MMA. Like, are you starting to notice that it's really, the sport is starting to get like respected a little bit more in the upper echelons of society?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's really interesting. I think it's becoming more of a professional sport. I think that there's still a long way to go, but it's becoming more commercialized. There's more opportunities. There's more bright minds and businesses getting involved to elevate the sport to become, you know, more of a professional sport. I think it's very interesting to see even the athletes go from being brawlers and being street fighters to other younger athletes coming through and thinking of it as a sport and an intellectual sport. And then it's, you know, about being able to combine both of those, being, you know, the intellect to the grit to, you know, being a fighter, but being an intelligent fighter at the same time. There's just so many evolutions happening right now. It's not slowing down, and it's so interesting, and it's so important for us to stay evolving with it, and being super connected to the evolution and what's happening in the culture. Because if you don't, it's really easy to be left behind in this day and age right now.
Where did your martial arts journey begin?
Began at Puma with Vince Perry here on the Gold Coast. So I was 19. I was fresh going to Surfers Paradise with the boys, and I wasn't a super big partier or drinker or anything like that. But as you do, your mates get into scuffles and fights and things like that. And I never wanted to start a fight, but I always said I wanted to be able to protect myself and end it if I was forced to be in that situation. So I literally walked into Puma by myself, just going, I think I want to do this. My mum actually, sad story, commit suicide. And that was something that also drove me to make a change. And so I walked into Puma for the first time. I remember walking in, Dylan Andrews fist bumped me, and I was there, I was in, and I was just completely consumed with martial arts from there. I started with kickboxing. I then moved into jiu-jitsu, and I focused pretty much all of my attention on jiu-jitsu for years. Moved to full metal jiu-jitsu with Jugs, Justin D, and then started getting back into MMA, and I had heaps of jiu-jitsu competitions. I did an amateur MMA fight and a boxing fight, not super high level. Heaps of jiu-jitsu comps. I never felt super competitive in that sense, but I was always a nerd, and I was always very interested in being a body for the guys who were fighters and making sure that I stayed up to date with what was happening. And then we moved from there to creating our own space, and just as a hobby gym, as I said. And then from there it became CMBT. So been doing it for about 15 years, just over 15 years. And in that time, I was lucky enough to grade to a black belt. And I've been an MMA coach there with some incredible coaches for the last sort of maybe 8 years. But I really feel like I've taken it seriously and really invested a lot of my time and resources and energy and brain power and body into being a proper MMA coach over the last sort of 2 years or so.
And you're doing really well with obviously all the fighters as well. Like even just Tasar Malone in itself he seems to be kind of strapped to a rocket. What are some of the sort of things that you've learnt in the last sort of 2 years as really pushing the MMA coaching? Kind of what's the hurdles and kind of what is actually your biggest success?
Biggest success. I think just seeing the collective results of a bunch of individuals, not just any one particular individual. It's like you mentioned Tasar. Tasar came to us on a few fight losing streak, and he's won 5 fights in a row with us. It's being able to work with these skillful athletes and their individualism, and their own way of doing things and their own body mechanics and their own ideas of what MMA is to them, and being able to sort of really work with them on that rather than pigeonhole them in one particular set of rules or concepts or foundations. So I think something that I've really focused on over the last 2 years is kind of ridding myself of any old school mentalities or rigid or narrow-minded thinking, and really allowing the lads and women in the gym to give their own ideas of what MMA is to them and what we should be doing, and having a meritocracy. So making sure that all the best ideas rise to the top, rather than me just saying, this is how we're going to do it and this is the only way. And I really feel like we've come together as a team, and we've really built somewhat of a system and a base that's allowed us to have success over success over success inside the competitive arena. And not to mention, I've been challenged by some of the most brilliant minds coming through the space. Back to sort of when Darcy Vendy was in the gym, he was such an intelligent guy. He always challenged me, constantly challenged me, and I love that, to make me think bigger about how to approach this MMA game and how to look at a human body and how they're meant to move and look at what the best guys in the sport are doing. And then I had the experience from guys like Glenn Sparv, who had, 40, 50 plus fights, and Brentin Mumford, who are just, staples and veterans in the MMA space. Imagine the experience that I've been able to extract out of these guys. And then I've got these young guns coming through like Tasar and Christian and Odin. Like, they are just on fire, and the talent that these guys have are unbelievable. So, it's just about being able to hone all of these things and channel them and create a simple message that then can be spread out to the team, and everyone can learn from everyone. And all I need to do as a coach is just package it all, make sure that everyone knows where they need to be, when they need to be there, what they're doing. But then I give them creativity to express the art how they want to during those sessions. And it's worked well for us. And I feel like we're just constantly evolving. And every single one of those guys that I mentioned, you're going to see them all again in the cage soon. We've got Eternal coming up in November 30, and a lot of those guys are fighting, and they're going to be a different version of what they were the last fight. And that's our goal. Every fight is to be a different version, an elevated version of where you were before.
Have you ever gone through a bit of like imposter syndrome?
Yeah, big time. Yeah, big time. Especially as someone who is, quote unquote, the head coach of a bunch of fighters who have had far more competitive experience than I have in that space. Especially at the start, where people are trying to work out who you are, what's been your background. Are you a tough guy? Can you hang with us? Can you spar with us? All these sorts of things. When we first started getting CMBT off the ground and we started to get a competitive team going, because people were attracted to a new facility, they would test me big time. And I was completely learning. But the beauty of my background in sort of the legal background in the business space is that I can sort of create simplicity out of seemingly complex problems, and that's what I've like really tried to do here. And that's how I've tried to learn MMA as quickly as possible. Like, everything seems quite complicated, but I break it down into its simplest sort of elements. And I'm always in the trenches with the boys too. And then over the years, they've seen me all out in business. They've seen how much the gym has evolved. I'm in there, over the last 5 years, we've probably done 8 renovations. We're always trying to make the space better. They can see I'm always changing the program. They can see the results there. I hang with the guys when it comes to sparring and grappling and stuff to the best of my ability. Not as much anymore. Christian knocked me out and burst my eardrum the last camp. And now I'm in camp with a couple other guys that'll be announced soon. So I just love it. I love getting in there with them. So that imposter syndrome's gone now, to a certain degree. I'm not trying to be anyone that I'm not. I'm not trying to tell people that I try and keep a real low profile. When we walk out in Eternal, I love the commentators that say, look at Brentin Mumford in the corner, look at Glenn Sparv, and look at Shannon Ross in the corner. And they don't say my name, and I'm like, perfect. I like to keep it that way. I want to stay in the shadows and let the guys in the cage.
This will help. This will help right
flourish. Now. Yeah, thanks, man. but in all seriousness, like I'm happy just being in the shadows and helping these guys with getting the resources they need to get to where they want to get to. But the imposter syndrome's slowly disappearing. When we spent some time at the UFC with Shannon Ross, I was watching what they were doing out the back, and although we didn't get the performances we wanted with Shannon, he was at a world-class level. The way that we were working together out the back, and the strategies and things, I just knew we deserved to be at that level. Now I've got Reece McLaren in one, top 5 flyweight in one, just an absolute talent. And I got the pleasure of going to Thailand with him recently to get a win over there, and I knew that we deserved to be there. We won against a tough Chinese kid. And so when we get those results, it just gives me more confidence that we're doing the right thing, and you know, I deserve to be here helping these guys. And
You talked about Shannon Ross. That's always quite a unique one where he gets this amazing opportunity, had a tremendous Australian MMA career, finally gets to the big show. And like you said, the performances were just not what we knew Shannon Ross for whatever reason. You know, you're taking on world-class opponents, whatever it may be. It seems like, I mean, from the outside, that's kind of the last we've seen of Shannon Ross. What does it feel like for a coach to kind of know what your fighter has gone through and then not get to really display who he is on the world stage?
yeah, it's an unusual roller coaster of emotions. Shannon and I have experienced some incredibly vulnerable human moments together, and that I'll cherish forever. And I love him dearly for allowing me to experience those moments with him. Our preparations for all of those fights were unbelievable. We threw the kitchen sink at them. We had Joseph Coyne, the former performance director of the UFC PI, running his S&C. We had all stops out, and he just looked unbelievable. I think for the first fight, we sort of thought, and this is an experience thing, right? We thought, okay, we're in the UFC now. We're going to start the fight. You're going to touch gloves. It's going to be a feeling out process. You guys are professionals. You guys are going to work out where each other are at. And so I think Shannon sort of expected that to happen. He touched gloves. He was going to have a little bit of a feeling out process, whereas Rodriguez just ran at him, all guns blazing, spinning, kicking, all that sort of stuff, and just caught him. And that was super unfortunate. He also missed weight. And, you know, but Shannon still took the fight like the warrior he is. And, okay, that one didn't go our way. The next one with Jesus, you know, we thought, okay, this is our one. This is the one we're going to really show the world what Shannon's made of. And before we even, you know, got seated in the corner, we looked up and Shannon had just hit the deck from that huge knockout. Obviously, Jesus has a shitload of power, and just closed his eyes, dived forward with that big overhand right, and unfortunately caught Shannon. And that was probably the most devastating one for us, because we really knew what Shannon had in the tank. And then the last one with a highly talented fighter out of Japan, big, strong flyweight. There were some really great moments of Shannon in that fight, but you could just see that every time Shannon got hit, there was just so much power from that Japanese kid that, you know, it would either sit Shannon down or he'd really get sort of impacted by that shot. Whereas, you know, the power that we had from our side wasn't quite impacting him as much. And then he just got caught by that body shot. So that was still a great fight. I've watched that back quite a lot and think that was a great fight. But unfortunately, Shannon didn't get any more opportunities. And you know, if only those first two fights went the way that we expected them to, he'd probably still be in the UFC. And you know, we got to take the lessons that we've learned from that. Shannon's good. Shannon is not attaching his identity to his losses. He is proud of himself for getting to the big stage. He obviously expects that he could have gone further. He's a competitor at heart and a great competitor. Yeah, I'm not sure if we've seen the last of Shannon. I know that he's always itching, but he was in the gym the other day. But yeah, I'm not so sure what's next for him. He's looking after his family and making up for lost time chasing this MMA sport, which is sometimes very unforgiving.
Do you think we see him in the cage again?
I don't know, man. I think you're going to see a lot of veterans that you didn't quite think were going to make a comeback come back. I won't let anything out of the bag. So I wouldn't be surprised if Shannon sees some of that and goes, "Fuck, I'm ready to get back in there too." Yeah,
and
we'll see.
What was it like backstage after these obviously unfortunate sort of result?
It was tough. You get whisked away pretty quickly in the UFC. They want you out of the building, straight away. So, oh yeah. The fighters get moved. The moment your fight gets done, you get moved out the back. You get your medical check, and then you're on the bus. I don't know the reason. My assumption is that as a contractor to the UFC, once that fight is done, your contract obligations are over, and now the UFC doesn't want the liability of you being in the building. If you get in a fight, if you have a drink, if you do whatever, and you're allowed to come back in the building with a ticket, but you're no longer a contractor for the UFC. So if something happens, they don't have to cover you for, anything. Whereas, once you're still a contractor, then, they're liable for what happens to you. So I don't know if you know that famous footage of Johnny,
Yeah,
is it Johnny
Walker out the front?
Walker? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you just get shipped out, straight out. So for the first couple, Shannon was okay. The first one, we just got shipped right out, and then we watched the rest of the card at the hotel and just joked and laughed and picked his spirits back up. The second one, obviously he suffered a pretty bad concussion, so we had to sit out the back for a good hour. None of us said a word. We literally just sat with him, not one word spoken for an hour, and we were just sat in our thoughts, and we were in a, super vulnerable team moment. And then he, his spirits got lifted after that, and we just said, wow, what a wild experience. What the fuck just happened? And then the last one, it was me, Shannon, and Shannon's wife, Beck, which was actually a really nice experience. And we just spent some time out in Vegas and out at Red Rock and, outside of the Strip, and just, appreciated where we are in life. And, we didn't get what we wanted, but, he was still healthy. He didn't get super injured, and we just enjoyed each other's company and, what we're getting to do in life. So finding that gratitude is really important. And I think that's a big role of mine too. I need to remind these guys, like, I know you're a competitor. I know this means everything to you, but this is not your identity, and the results do not define you. So you need to pick yourself up, find the gratitude for where we're at. And hey, if it's time to go again, we go again, and we learn from our mistakes.
Awesome. And a couple more questions before I let you go. I was obviously going to ask you about, one of the toughest hurdles in your personal life, but I'm assuming you've mentioned it previously as we went back. Can you talk about, and of course you don't have to, but you mentioned the unfortunate suicide of your mother. Like, can you take us back to where you were personally and obviously what that journey was like for you?
Yeah, of course. No, I'm super open about it. I've run some events for mental health and try and be as much of an advocate for mental health as I possibly can. My mom was severely paranoid schizophrenic for as long as I knew her. If you guys have seen A Beautiful Mind with Russell Crowe, the movie, it was a perfect depiction of who she was, incredibly intelligent, but highly paranoid, hallucinations. She'd think people were breaking into our house and stabbing us with needles in our sleep and all these sorts of things. And then she'd say that we were part of a royal family and all of these crazy, thought processes ever since I was a little kid. So as you can imagine, it's pretty scary. We grew up in King's Cross. I'd walk to school, to Darlinghurst Public School by myself from like 5, 6 years old. Just walking through the heat of the cross during the underbelly days. And that was just my life. I knew that something was different about her. I knew that she wasn't the same as other parents. And then my dad got custody of me, and we moved to the Gold Coast. So that was in Sydney, moved to the Gold Coast. And so throughout my life, I just built a mechanism of dealing with her and the mental illness. And often she'd say that she was going to commit suicide. It was often a sort of like an attention-seeking thing, or so we thought. We never thought that she would actually commit to it. And then 7 days before my 20th birthday, she hung herself in her own apartment. So that was obviously like a super overwhelming experience. My mind expected it to some degree because she'd talked about it my whole life and threatened it and all those sorts of things. So I dealt with it the best I could. My grandparents are European. They don't speak much English. So as a young man, I had to deal with her affairs and her funeral and all these sorts of things. And it just made me grow up really fast, and also realize the importance of, things in life. And I ran some events for mental health and did some charity work and all that sort of stuff. And I guess you could say that was the toughest moment in my life, but I've been through many, you know, losing people that are close to me to, you know, huge business ups and downs, potentially losing everything I've got to having big wins and stuff like that. So I definitely haven't taken the easy road. I'm definitely not risk adverse. I love the challenge, and in life, this is how I sort of refer to myself as a fighter in life. Maybe not in the cage, but in life for sure.
Was there any anger as a kid towards your mother or even your father for not, you know, I don't know, maybe getting custody? Like, was there any of that anger as a kid?
Heaps, heaps, heaps of anger, heaps of deep, 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 deep seated anger, um, that I really had to overcome over time. Uh, and I think I think martial arts is literally the only thing I can attribute to what has got me through it. What has allowed me to survive. I would be in a gutter. I would be somewhere crazy if it wasn't for martial arts and my partner Holly. They're the two things that were constants in my life. Everything else was crazy. So the fact that I had those two constants gave me some sort of stability and support, and allowed me to deal with all the other chaos that was outside of my life. And now I've been able to create stability in my own life, and I've created my own successes. And now I can see in other kids that come through our facility the same things that I've gone through. I can see in them, and I try my best to try and help create some stability for these guys, especially these fighters as well. There's a reason they're fighting. Fighting doesn't really make a lot of sense. Like, it's pretty crazy. When I sit beside that cage and I see Taser walk into that cage and fight Ethan Mitchell and get his nose pushed across his face. That shit's not normal, you know. So you know, these guys have gone through something and are going through something, and fighting is there for them, and I want to be there for them as well to create some sort of stability and help them, you know, create success out of their life, also outside of fighting and beyond fighting.
Well, I mean, I'm glad we've definitely talked about this because I mean, for a guy that has gone through what you've gone through to have the educational background, the business success, and just the personal ability to not let the things that has happened to him craft who he is in a negative sense. You've used it to sort of elevate yourself, and you can't see it. You know, you're not an angry guy. Like, you've not talked shit about one single person this entire time. Obviously, martial arts is a big part of it, but how did you become sort of like who you are? Did you just decide one day, like, I'm not going to let this consume me?
Yeah, I think everyone has a fork in the road when they go through hard times. And I think this is going to sound pretty crazy, to be honest with you, but I'm happy to say it because I'm an open book. My mum going through what she went through, and I mentioned to you that she would always say, we're part of a royal family, we're special, we're this and that. And then she would go down these other crazy tracks. I think that in that delusion and in these stories that I knew weren't true, she gave me some sort of self-esteem. She helped me build some sort of self-esteem out of delusion and out of something I knew wasn't real. So I do think that the hard times that I've had in my life have actually been my special powers, because every time I've gone through something hard, I've always had a habit of just going, cool, how can I make the best out of this situation? Or how does this situation help me? As opposed to feeling sorry for myself, getting down in the dumps, attaching my identity to it, thinking I'm a failure. I've never had those thoughts. I've always been able to go down the other pathway, which is, fuck, I just lost $500,000 cash in that deal. That could have sunk me, or it sunk me. What a great experience. That was awesome. Like, holy shit. Man, put me in the gutter and I'll be sweet. Like, put me in a gutter and I'll survive and I'll phoenix out and I'll make a success. I'm so delusional and sure of myself in that sense. So nothing can hurt me unless someone kills me. Like, you knock me out, I don't care. I don't care if that happens, if the crowd sees me get knocked out or people see me fail or CMPT fails. Oh, well, like I tried my best. I'm not attaching my identity to it. And I think that if I am being completely honest, I think that goes all the way back to my mum saying that we were special. And some internal part of me thought, oh, maybe I'm special. But like, I think as I mature and grow older, I know I'm not special, but I at least have a self-esteem and a control of my mind to know when I'm going down a dark path and to be able to turn myself out of it. And I think that that's something that I would love to see a lot of young people challenge themselves with as well, instead of sort of taking on that dark path, challenging themselves to see, a positive route and see an alternative route. So, yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely disagree. You are, in fact, quite special. It's just the way.
Right back at you, bro.
Yeah.
Right back at you.
And I guess it's like what they always say with the whole, like, isn't it better to just think everything is going to be okay? Because then if it's not, it's over.
Yes, exactly.
That's kind of how I check through life. Now, mate, before I let you go, I always ask everyone this question, but I'm going to ask both you personally and CMBT as a brand. But first off, how does CMBT want to be remembered in mixed martial arts and just life in general?
I think we're getting there, but I want us to be remembered as a community that genuinely cared, that provided a positive contribution to the community, led with purpose over profits, really did help elevate, the sport of martial arts, performance and health in general, and had an impact on the world. I believe that we can, I believe we're crazy enough to think we can make a positive change in the world, no matter how small or big. And that's what I want to be remembered for, that we were one of the good guys, and that good guys don't always finish last. Like, good guys can finish on top as well. And we can bring the whole community with us and everyone else can succeed with us. So that's how I want us to be remembered in terms of a brand. And also from a gym perspective, you know what? We can lead Australian MMA. We can do things with an open mind. We don't have to be tribalistic or political or be nasty to other gyms or all this sort of stuff. Like, we just lead by being good guys, being fucking good at what we do, and show up in the cage, and that's where we show it. And we're gonna, you wait, next year we're gonna have a few guys on the world stage for sure. And every gym has a cycle, and I feel like CMBT is maybe quicker than what others have gone through, but we get to where we deserve to be, and I feel like we're going to rise to the top of that cycle over the next couple of years for sure.
Finally, after it's all said and done, how does Miles Muecke want to be remembered in mixed martial arts?
In mixed martial arts, I think that CMBT is just a vehicle for my own selfish purpose. And I know for a fact that I'm put on this earth to build positive things for my community. I'm someone who provides resources to people and helps them get a leg up. I love creating rock stars out of people, and I love putting people on a stage and making them succeed and achieve their goals. So I just want to be known as someone who was selfless, was an important part of elevating the professional image of MMA in this country, and showing how it can and should be done from a professional perspective, taking it away from that blood sport mentality and that bikey landscape, and showing we can do this in a really professional way, and bring like the whole public and general community on board for this ride as well.
Well, Miles, I've done nearly 400 interviews and this might be my favorite. So thank you.
Ah,
Thank you so much for taking the time to learn the brand and most importantly, the man behind the brand. It has been quite a journey of which you have to not even be a part of this sport to enjoy. So I thank you for the hour that we've been talking. And yeah, mate, look, I want to appreciate your vulnerability and your time and putting your dreams out there and letting us all know a little bit more about Miles and a little bit more about CMBT. So from me and everyone that listens to Australian MMA, and I speak on behalf of them, thank you.
thank you, bro. I love what you're doing. I really appreciate what you're doing as well. It takes all of us to elevate this, and I get a lot of my first time news from your channel. So I love what you're doing, and I really appreciate you reaching out and giving me a platform and CMBT a platform. So look forward to seeing you in person.
Awesome. Thank you, mate. See you later.
Thank you, my bro. See ya.